Are you ready to become awesomer? Hello everyone, my name is Umar Hamid. I'm your host on the No Limit Selling podcast, where industry leaders share their tips, strategy, and advice on how you can become better, stronger, faster. Just before we get started, I've got a question for you. Do you have a negative voice inside your head? We all do, right? I'm going to help you remove that voice in under 30 days guaranteed. Not only remove it, but transform it. So instead of the voice that sabotages you, there's one that propels you to much higher levels of performance and success. There's a link in the show notes. Click on it to find out more. All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the No Limit Selling podcast. Today, we have Aaron, let's pronounce this right, Rawlake. That's an unusual name. Aaron, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today, and as we get to know each other a little bit more, and I'm just looking forward to it.
So, tell me about Rawlake. What kind of name is that?
You know what? It's actually funny. My family roots are Romanian. Really doesn't go much farther than when they came over to the country with kind of the gypsy influence through Romania. So we haven't been able to track it farther. But actually, when my family came here, we had a Romanian last name, and my great grandfather, when they settled up north of where I am, a place called Pierceland, Saskatchewan, when they registered to get their land, and they were going to run a business, so they changed their name truly to something that would attract. Yeah, well, that would attract the indigenous population here. So
that's what it sounded like. That's what I thought. It was actually one of those names.
Yeah, so it really is that way. So my family, my cousins and I kind of joke when people come across others with the exact same spelling. It is 100% guaranteed that we are related. So it's worked out well for us, being somewhat unique, not like a Joe Smith or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So by any chance, have you ever eaten a Chinese gooseberry?
I have not.
So this stuff is not selling at all. So some marketing guy goes, this shit ain't selling. Let's change the name of it. Let's call it a kiwi.
Yeah.
Ta-da! Wow. Everyone's eating a kiwi.
That's okay.
You want to eat a kiwi. You don't want to see the Chinese gooseberry. So marketing and naming things, it's magical.
So that is, I'm so glad you told me that story. One of my little roles on the side as a volunteer is I actually am an assistant coach with a college volleyball team here.
Love it.
I was a former player. We had a former player that was from Australia, and we have a brand new recruit from New Zealand. So that will be the first thing I'm asking them tonight, is if they've had a
Chinese gooseberry.
Chinese gooseberry.
So thank you for being on the program today. And I'm not sure if I should share this with the world, but he's a reformed banker. So you went from banking to real estate. So what was the advantage of that? Because certainly, there's lots of advantages coming from that industry to this, because money's a really big part of this, but also having relationships and selling is critical in being a banker. So talk to me about the transition and what skills became highly useful, and what insights from banking helped you be a better realtor.
Wow. When I kind of took the foray into banking, I progressed pretty quickly, and I was lucky to be in a situation that really believed in the people understanding the entirety of the role. So I spent some time working in the front line, as they call it, a member service rep, a teller, as most people call it. Right. And then into the lending side of things, and then through to managing and dealing with investments and all that. But through it all, it was a real customer service experience. That was probably the biggest thing. And more so than anything, you kind of get into that habit of, what can I do for you? But I found it much more valuable to progress from that, to ask that question and then listen. Everybody had their unique needs, especially when I got into the lending side of it. It is, listening to what they had and their reasons and why they wanted to do what they did. Now, I dealt with a lot of businesses and farms, and especially from that is really working with people to talk long-term. It's not just, I need 20 grand to buy a car. Well, that's really simple. But when I started dealing with farmers and business owners, it's, let's talk right now, let's talk 3 years, let's talk 5 years, let's talk retirement, and build that that holistic view of what we're going to need to do. And that took really, for me, a refinement of my listening skills to understand what was important to them and how we could, work together to make that happen. And granted, it's banking. Sometimes it's a no, but when you can really dig into it and understand their passion.
So let's step back a little bit around listening, because that is a superpower, and most people have the illusion that they're good listeners.
You're right, Umar. Like that's the biggest thing we talk about in real estate, in our sales meetings all the time. Telling's not selling.
Yeah, of course.
You're not gonna tell someone, the more someone tells me I have to do something or buy something, it's my nature. And I think a lot of people's just to kind of push back. But being able to listen and understand, and, you can call it empathizing, stepping into their shoes, walk a mile in my shoes, all those types of things, but comprehending what and why things need to happen for them.
Absolutely, because I think it's not only listening to what they're saying, it's how they're saying it.
Yes.
And as I was watching you and watching your eye movements, in just in that short sentence you did, you checked into your feeling state 2-3 times, and you checked into visual recalls 2-3 times. And also, sometimes I can talk to somebody on the phone and I can go, what's going on? Because there's a slight change in their tonality.
Yeah.
And they're like, how do you know something's going on? It's like, I can hear it clearly in your voice. And so I think, dear listeners and viewers, if there's one thing you need to do is to improve your listening skills. And here's a couple of ways to do that. Number one, so I'm going to use you as my guinea pig, if I may. So Aaron, I'm going to speak a few sentences, and I'd like you to hear them, and I'd like you to repeat it inside your head as I'm saying it. Ready? I am a terrible volleyball player, but I get a lot of joy when I play it. So as I said that, were you repeating it inside your head?
I was, with a secondary voice saying, this guy's crazy.
Of course, so you got a third thing going on. And here's the question. Did you hear it in my voice when you repeated, or in your voice?
I heard it in your voice.
So isn't that interesting? If there were 10 people there, there'll be 60% would have heard it in my voice, and 40% would have heard it in their voice. Here's what that little trick does. What that little trick does is this, is that when I'm listening to you, you talk too slowly, because my brain is way faster than your speaking speed. And that allows me to think of, what am I having for lunch today? And is this interview going to be over? Is this guy crazy? Like that voice that came up for you. And so when I give my brain something to do, repeat what you say. Number one, it focuses me on what you're saying. So it forces me to listen. Number two, since I'm repeating it inside my head, I'm actually learning it a different way. So it goes in deeper. And the third thing to do is watch my lips as I'm speaking. And that also gives you something to do. And the byproduct of that is this, is right now I can tell you're 100% paying attention to me. So a lot of times we're looking at someone, but we're thinking about other stuff. They can sense it. So hopefully, dear viewers and listeners, listening is a superpower. Here's a couple of ways to do it. And Aaron, you are right. This guy is cray cray.
Well, 2 peas in a pod today then.
Excellent. So you bring the banking skills in, and certainly so one of the things I find with bankers will say, hey man, I'm a banker. I'm not a salesperson. As if sales is a bad thing. And if you're a banker and you don't sell, you're getting fired. So why do you think sales is a bad word in our society? Because without salespeople, nothing happens. No ideas go forward. No nonprofits move forward. No cures for cancer happen. And no houses get sold. So why do you think sales has become a bad word when it really isn't?
I think it is just an old school ideology of almost like the door-to-door salesman that's trying to sell you
vacuum cleaner.
You'll understand what I mean to say. You and I are even older, but the person at the door trying to push the Encyclopedia Britannica on you.
Just before you go forward, pause right there. Yeah. I've got a client. He sells vacuums door to door, and there's a whole community of people in North America that sell that door to door, and they make a fabulous living at it. Yep. So that is not dead. You think it would be, but it is not. But please go on. So that old door-to-door, sleazy salesperson kind of mentality.
You hear it, and I have some wonderful friends that are in the business and are very great at it, but you always hear the stories and the cliches on the movies, the slimy car salesmen and things like that. And unfortunately, I think when you deal with sales, when you have a bad sales experience, that tends to just become forefront over any positive or excellent sales experiences that you've had. And I think we just keep defaulting back to kind of the worst case scenario, that it's always going to be bad.
You tell that story. You tell that bad story more times than you tell a good story.
You do. And I think sometimes people just don't feel that they have they've built up a trust with many people that are selling, which is, the inherent part of our business is if people don't trust you, why should they do business with you?
Absolutely. And I think what you mentioned when we started this whole conversation was listening. And when I listen to and pay attention to you, that is the first foundational piece of building trust between us. Because one thing in this society I can guarantee. So a good example is you have somebody that quits a company. And on the exit interview, when HR does it, one of the common things that they hear is, my manager just didn't listen to me. Like, we had these meetings, but the guy or gal was checked out doing something else. Or it's like, really? Let me check my phone when I'm talking to you. Not that blatantly, but people were checked out. And I think people are craving that connection with other human beings because sometimes they don't even get it at home. There's a beautiful picture of your significant other behind you. I bet if I had a chance to talk to her, sometimes is your husband there and not fully there when he's watching TV. I have to do this. That's my wife would do that because I'm guilty. And it's just human nature. And part of that is most of us are in a trance most of the time. We're driving down the street and we don't remember the last 10 exits. We were there at one level paying attention, but at another level, we were thinking about the new deal, my beautiful wife, my amazing kids. And so, but when you give someone the honor of attending to them and being there for them, that's love, man. When you do it with someone you love, it goes deep. When it's a stranger, it builds connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, just to kind of dovetail on that, we actually had a conversation the other day about, with everything changing, with what, the pandemic did and things like that, is how to adjust dealing and connecting with people electronically, whether it's the phone and even techniques to connect with them personally when you deal solely with text messages and things. And for us in the area we live in, we're a very, rural area. And, thankfully for us, the majority of our people still love and appreciate the value of a handshake, the face-to-face connection. And we make a real effort to make that part of our business is to connect with people personally, reach out, shake their hand and have a real conversation with them. I mean, I love connecting with my clients on a personal level and really finding out, about them and what makes them tick. And it works out great for me because repeat business is a huge part of what we do. And if you don't connect with them, you're not going to repeat with them.
Absolutely. And I think in our short time together, I've probably got 3 legitimate compliments I could give you that I've noticed in our small interaction. And I don't want to make you blush, So when we meet people, if you're open to just noticing who they are, and if you can give them an authentic, legitimate compliment, not to, they'll like me, not with intent of I'm going to get something out of it, just by noticing them and just pointing one thing out, you start building that connection. And whether they buy from you or not doesn't make a difference. It's if you have the agenda, hey, I'm going to get Aaron to buy something from me, you can sense that. Like there's a transactional nature to his kindness.
Yeah.
But when it's just like one human to another. So how long have you been in the real estate side of things?
I've been in for 8 years.
8 years. And tell me about one of the lessons you learned in your journey in real estate that was transformational in you as a human being, just being a better person, better agent. Like, did you have one of those experiences where you just kind of went, huh? And it was like a before that event and an after that event kind of situation?
For me, it was, I was really lucky when I came into the business. I came in under the mentorship of a realtor that had been really ingrained in our community for 30 years. So
let's give them some kudos. Who was that?
Yeah. So it was Connie Kempton. She was, I still to this day, I mean, she's my real estate mom. She's been long retired, but if I call, she answers and having someone that has your back and is in your corner to give you that experience. And she was really good at knowing when she had to kind of guide me, and then also really good at knowing when she needed to push me out of the nest. So it was it was really good. And really my moment was with assistance from her, where, you had clients out and sometimes you kind of get caught spinning your tires. We've been to multiple places, things like that. And we were at a bit of a stall, and the comment she made to me was, have you asked the question? And that's where I really had to start to learn to refine my listening skills, but it coincided with my asking skills to really
which question? Like, have you asked the question? Was there a specific question?
It was really digging into wants versus needs. People say, well, I want 2 bedrooms, I want 2 bathrooms. Well, but let's weigh your wants and needs. And then just a simple question is this the house for you? Or is this the place for you? And kind of getting to the point, not being pushy, but really learning how to get them to think about it. And that was the biggest one, is asking the question, and whether that question is, like I said, is this the place for you, or prompting them to express their feelings. A lot of people don't want to really, kind of spew what's in their head, and prompting that. And so asking without telling was the biggest thing for me.
So before we started recording, you told me you had 2 kids, like in their teens, 20s. Who is the oldest?
Our daughter Avery is 21.
So I want you to just for a moment remember the first time you held Avery in your arms.
Yeah, that was it's an eye-opening moment for any of you that have ever had that first child. It's I'm generally a pretty talkative guy, but I was pretty speechless when you think, oh, what the heck?
So A, thank you for sharing that. And B, by me asking that one simple question, like your face is flushed.
Yeah.
You went back to that. So when we ask questions, we have the ability to change someone's brain chemistry. Mm-hmm. Just think about that fucking statement right there.
That's fascinating.
And the questions that we ask, and one of the questions I ask is, or I would ask is, is this the home for you? And whatever that answer is, the second question could be, depending on the answer, what would make it the home for you? And that also gets them to think. And then they kind of go, before it's like, nah, that's not the home for me. What would make it the home for you? Then they're going to go, if the bedroom was a little bigger, or this was happening, just that kind of stuff is, so it's not only listening, is helping your clients get insights, because oftentimes people don't know what the frick they're talking about. Mm-hmm. They have a concept of it, and you being a great salesperson, if you can get them to get clarity on what they're thinking, is huge. That's such a value add thing that you can do, and you've got the power to do that.
Yeah, I reflect back to a time where I keep the oddest things in my vehicle for especially showing homes, and had some clients for where we are. We've got some glorious sunsets and a west facing backyard, and we're showing this house, late fall. So for us, the sun sets, 8:30 type of thing at that time, and beautiful evening. And pretty convenient that I've got a couple of lawn chairs. The house was vacant, and
love it.
Let's just sit on the deck, and what can you picture yourself just sitting here in the evening looking at the view? And I remember that the husband, he looks at me and he smirks and he says, "You dirty bastard." They were all in. But you know what? Then here we are, 60 days later, and I get a photo from them where they've completed the yard, and they've put a hot tub in, and everything looks fabulous. And they sent me a picture from that same spot where we were sitting, and just said, "Hey,
I love what you did, and I love that guy."
Yeah, they just said, "You know what? Thank you. We love it here."
So it kind of reminds me, in where I used to live, Baltimore, it's really close to DC, and they've got the Stratmore, is this amazing house for opera and music, and breathtaking. And I met the guy whose brainchild it was. And what he ended up doing was getting an architectural drawing of what it would look like from one of the balconies.
Yeah.
And he ordered 2 of the seats that were actually going to be installed. And remember those things, you're old enough to remember when you went to a record store, they had this plastic dome where the sound would just bathe you.
Yeah, yeah.
He had 2 of those set up, and he would get donors coming in to his office. He'd get them to sit on those chairs. He had this board with what it would look like, and they would hear the music, and they raised $100 million to build that thing.
Wow.
So your 2 deck chairs, genius.
Yeah.
And certainly the guy went, "You dirty bastard," in which case, that's a compliment. But really what you were doing was let me help you, because at the end of the day, it's all about emotions.
Let
And
me
you
help
have
you
to
feel it.
create, yeah, let me help you feel it. And the feeling could have been like, oh, that's really nice, but this isn't the house for us. Could have been a very legitimate thing for them to say. But this thing just grounded them in what they really want to buy. And so that's twice today, applause for you. That's like totally genius, my friend. So one of the questions I ask people is this, Aaron, is that Aaron 5 years ago sucked compared to Aaron that's sitting before me. But 5 years from now, you're going to be more amazing than you are right now. So what are you doing to learn, to grow? Like, what are the areas that you're focusing on to let the more amazing Aaron show up?
Open senses. And where I'm going to extrapolate on that with keeping my eyes open, keeping my ears open,
Nice.
my feelings open, not being afraid. It's going to sound silly, not being afraid to steal. Intellectual property is probably the most valuable thing that we have. And
Yeah.
being able to look at different sides and being open to just viewpoints and how they reflect to you and not to I consider myself, I'm not this side, and not to bring politics into it, like kind of ride the middle, understand both sides and really
Perspective is so important.
Yeah. And that's the nice thing. One of the things I'm lucky to do is I end up a lot of time, I'm in a vehicle, I'm a realtor, I drive around a lot. So find those podcasts, find those points of view and listen to them. And sometimes you may not like them, but I've always, that was the one thing I had to commit myself to was, okay, I may not like what I'm hearing, but I'm going to listen to it and I'm going to hear it out to try and understand it. And then, move on to another one. Podcast has probably helped me the most. I'm not a big reader. I can't sit
Right.
and read a book, but I can listen. So I've really liked that aspect of things. Technology has helped me a lot, but also just meeting people, and seeing how people work. I love spending time with, especially a lot of our corporate clients is just get a sense of, hey, spend some time at their business and see how it works. My wife works in the education field and I get to chat with a lot of teachers and kind of listen in on how they deal with today's young people, right from, 5 to 18 years old. And that gives me a perspective on the young kids coming up. I really pay attention, especially to my daughter's age, that kind of 21-year-old group. They're coming out of college and university and they're going to be our next set of clients and really getting a sense of how they look at the world and deal with the world. I mean, they do things that we don't comprehend. Staying on top of trends and technology, that's one of the greatest gifts my kids have given me without knowing it.
Brilliant. So, Aaron, when you listen to this broadcast again, go back to when you were doing that last statement. We were talking about listening.
Yeah.
And when you talked about stealing, like ideas from other people,
yeah.
A, you got emotional, but B, your tonality changed right there because it was not doing something bad. It was like something sacred. So, Aaron, thanks for being on the show today. I really, really enjoyed our conversation and keep up the good work.
Umar, thanks so much for having me. It's been a great conversation, enlightened me, given me some things to think about and learn from, even though I'm having the conversation with you. So best of luck to you. And thanks again for having me on today.
My pleasure. I'm looking forward to our next conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. And if you're looking for more tools, go to my website at nolimitselling.com. I've got a free mind training course there that's going to teach you some insights from the world of neuro-linguistic programming, and that is the fastest way to get better results.